how and when. You know him from the time he started in the fire department. And there's a handful of you that know him before that, but majority of you probably don't. So I'm going to try to talk to you tonight and share some memories of my brother Rod from his perspective, if he was here speaking to you, with no disrespect to my favorite brother, one of my favorite brothers. I have another one. So my first name is Rene, and I'm Rod's oldest brother, and I'm speaking to you through his eyes. And this is strictly when I'm through, you're going to have a little more knowledge, 136, of exactly from the time he's born, what brought him up to going into the fire department, and what a cross-reference there is in his childhood that led him to the fire department. And as I go through this, you'll try to work with me, and I'll try to get through this. But I took it from Rod's perspective. If he was sitting here with us, and he just says, I was born on March 4th, 1960, in Dayton's Good Samaritan Hospital. And a little bit this is repetitive, I apologize, but it'll all make sense as I get through. My parents are Don and Eunice Longpre. Dad is no longer with us, but my mom is here with us today, along with my brothers, Rainey and Rich. We were often referred to as the 3 R's growing up, meaning Rainey, Rod, and Rich. And wherever Mom is, that got to be a little tongue twister, because she'd be screaming at one of us, Rich, Rod, damn it, Roger, get over here, or whoever she was hollering at, to scold us or whatever the deal was. I had a wonderful childhood growing up. It was in the north end of Dayton on a street called Bruce Avenue off of North Main Street. There was about 32 of us kids, all from various Catholic families and diverse working backgrounds. From my father, who owned Midwestern Optical Supply Company, to an engineer, a CPA, a mechanic, an attorney, and all other business owners. We even had a Dayton juvenile detective that lived on our street. We could always count on him to keep all of us kids on the straight and narrow. God forbid we stepped out of line. And Debbie's dad is right, or Debbie, her father, who's passed, that's who that was. Anyway, all of these kids made for a great childhood. I remember riding bicycles 9 to 10 miles, clear out to Inglewood Dam, playing war games, and all kinds of other nonsense, whatever we kids did in those days. But in the winter, having snowball fights, including pelting, piling up ice balls, and nailing the RTA buses going down North Main Street as kids, with no broken windows or injuries, I also remember when I was only about 4, I got hit by a car darting across the street to catch up with my older brother, Rainey, who was in a neighbor's driveway shooting basketball across the street. From about 1966 through 73, I attended Our Lady of Mercy School, grades 2 through 8, and many of you can relate to the strict guidelines and discipline of a well-taught Catholic upbringing. We had a principal, Sister Adriana, who ruled the halls and the playground. And she could throw an eraser and nail you in the back of the head. You could be down the hall and around the corner. She'd rifle that frickin' eraser down and nail you if you were screwing up. So like many of the other boys, she was something. She really was, and she was a tyrant. We hated her, but she ruled the roost. And that's why I'm such a good guy in this day and age. Anyway, like many of the other boys in the neighborhood, I had a newspaper route, delivering door to door and earning a weekly income. Dad made me save part of that so that I could have something in my future that probably out of high school I could someday buy and have a little down payment, maybe a new car or whatever I decided I wanted to buy. So about then, I had a friend, Neil Gath, who was involved with his father in a group called the Indian Guides, with activities like hiking, camping, and outdoor activities. This is where I learned about bow and arrow and target shooting at a young age. My dad agreed to get me involved, and it started in me a lifelong love of the outdoors and sparked my interest in Native American culture and love of crafts. Speaking of culture, I'm of French-Canadian descent on my father's side, as you probably know. Hockey is the favorite Canadian sport, so Dad encouraged us to learn how to ice skate, which led him to putting hockey gear on me. With a stick in hand, off I went. Rene and Rich seemed to love the game, but I was perhaps a little more non-aggressive. At one of my earliest games, I allowed an opposing player to skate around me and score the winning goal. When I returned to the bench, my dad, who was our team coach, met me on the bench and, shaking his index finger at me, asked me, "Rod, why'd you let that kid skate around you? It cost us the game." And I said, "Dad, what was I supposed to do?" So Dad looked at me and said, "Rod, you were supposed to knock him on his ass and take the puck away." I interrupted him and said, "But Dad, I didn't want to hurt him." So I decided at that point to hang up my skates, and I was determined to pursue other interests that were less aggressive, where nobody was going to get hurt. Around 73, I got interested in music at that early age and was often home with my guitar while my two brothers continued playing hockey. I never went back to the rink other than to a bunch of great concerts at Hare Arena. Music, art, and Indian crafts became my passion. As grade school came to a close, my love of my music grew as I entered Colonel White High School in 1974. I became friends with a few other musicians, and I don't know who's left out here right now that knew Rod, that jammed with him in those days, but in the early days, you know who you are out there. Anyway, we had many great jam sessions and times that we spent together. High school was okay, but my senior year, a friend of mine who was here earlier, Richard Warren, he and I decided to quit school and seek adventures somewhere else, away from Dayton. We figured there's a big world out there to explore, and the U.S. Army was calling our names. We did our basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and in addition to the physical and other training, I was given a rating of expert in marksmanship on the M16, and I specialized as a sharpshooter with a .45 caliber pistol. We stayed on in basic for an additional 2 weeks of training after basic, and during basic, I carried the flag for my platoon and learned the proper color guard procedures. After basic, we were sent to Germany. I spent about 2.5 years there in Gelnhausen and Frankfurt. I enjoyed a pay grade of an E5 with the 1st Battalion and the 33rd Armored Division. I was a track engineer for about 16 months, and I operated an M48 and an MC60, 2 different models. It was a great time and opportunity to see another part of the world and enjoy the people, food, and culture. I was honorably discharged and returned to Dayton in around 78, and I started looking for work. I moved in with my brother Rene, which is nothing like the Army in any sense. I found work with a construction company and ended up getting a position with Metropolitan Armored Car. It was then that I earned the nickname Barney Fife, affectionately given to me by my brother Rene. With my Army experience and my .38 service revolver, I was well qualified, but Rene insisted that I was trained to kill and perhaps should not carry a loaded gun. On a serious note, my job function was to transport currency from banks and various businesses. One of my stops was a AAA travel office location where I took a fancy to a beautiful gal by the name of Chrissy, who's here with us. A little flirtatious and a few encouraging smiles from her, I got up the nerve to invite her to lunch. Now, let me just tell you, this wasn't your ordinary lunch. No, it was a picnic lunch. And I took her to Carillon Park, where I spread out a blanket and with a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers and some food. We had a wonderful lunch together. If a picnic lunch wasn't enough, I took along my 12-string guitar and serenaded her. Some might call me a helpless romantic. We dated, and about a year later, she introduced me to her 2 young boys, Joe and Jeff. Who were about 6 and 4 years old at the time. We dated for about a year before we were married. I selected my birthday for a wedding date so I'd never forget our anniversary. And we were happily married for 33 years. And Chrissy's right back there. Anyway, I ended up leaving the armored car position, and in '85 I enrolled for employment as a Dayton firefighter. I spent nearly 25 years of active duty doing what became my passion and career, working with some of the greatest people I have ever had the pleasure of knowing and who I consider family. I'm honored by your presence here today and for your love and support. And I'm thankful for my family and friends who have gathered to say goodbye and to celebrate my wonderful life. I wish you all peace and happiness. Stay well until we see each other again. That's all I have, but I wanted you to realize that there's so many common denominators. I'm not Rod anymore, by the way, this is me. There's so many common denominators with all this linking together. The Indian guys, which got the Indian going in him, which is his, just his love. And you can't tell me different. If you're in the Army and you're rolling in those big tanks, you're damn sure qualified to drive an engine or a big truck for you guys. I mean, come on. That's how it all came together. So you knew Rod from the time he became a brother in the 136, so to speak. And again, we're just honored, and I can't thank everyone enough for hosting this and giving him the send-off. I speak for my mother, Eunice, Larry, my brother, my family, and all of you, and my beautiful fiance, Annette. Can't thank you. We couldn't have got through this if it wasn't for you guys, and I know Rod was deeply touched, and I thank you all so much. That's all I got. Let's have a drink. And let me just say that does anybody else want to say anything, brothers or sisters, please come up and do your thing. Mic's open. Cool stories, anything we encourage that. If there's anything that y'all did with Rod that you can legally tell about, you can come up and talk about it.